He gets the call. Even an errand boy can't wait forever, especially given the cargo he carries. In an instant, dinner is over, and with a silent but powerful summons, I realize there will be no dessert for me. With 3 legs, he mounts the steel horse and turns the key. This motorcade doesn't rev, but it sure can fly. I give chase while we weave through crowds. At this hour, their movements are unpredictable. They can barely see straight. These guests come here to forget, but Massa comes to remember. Every few years, he returns to his primitive home and asserts dominance over the locals. Time is of the essence. The sun has already set, and money has already changed hands. In a flash, he turns the corner. All eyes are on him, with me trailing behind on foot. Before he can dismount his electric scooter, he is yelling, "Ose, ven aquí!" and 7 men appear. Despite sharing a name and all looking identical, they know who is boss. Silently, the staff guides him to the front of a shuttle, and he is seated next to the driver, while I am made to sit among the guests in the back. They reek of salt water and sand, with alcohol radiating from their breath. I close my eyes and focus on the wind. I hear voices behind the trees. They call to me and gaze upon me with envy. The driver is picking up speed as Massa cracks the whip. He blows past the first stop, and like a choir in unison, the guests erupt with cries. The driver understands, but he doesn't serve them. He serves Massa. 2, 3, 4, and many more. We fly by stops, weaving around pedestrians. We bounce on the pavement due to our speed, and Massa is pleased, his face beaming with joy. An older woman is next to me, and she can't help but stare. She's in her 50s, but taken care of, a true vixen. She asked me how long I had been here, and I tell her I arrived 4 days ago, but my soul has been here for centuries. She chuckles but doesn't understand. She would never believe that I see my ancestors behind the trunk of every palm tree. After 15 minutes, we finally stop at the front gate. The shuttle is still full, and without a word, Massa points. That is my cue to secure the package. Our errand boy has been waiting long enough, but such is the life of a Haitian courier. I check the inventory, and everything is there. 6 boxes of medical-grade prescriptions, just what the doctor ordered. I'm not permitted to shake his hand, but I give the courier a little extra for his time, a mistake that Massa would be sure not to forget. In the blink of an eye, we are once again speeding back to our departure point, passing stops and stirring up confusion and rage from the guests. Full of exhaustion, the vixen turns to me once again, and with Malibu baberies in the air, she asks, "Who is he?" My answer is simple. That is my father, and we are Dominican royalty. It is paradise in the Caribbean, and Latinas are everywhere. I am your host, Negative Nick, and this is the No Good News Podcast. I know you guys missed me. Feels good to be back for the new year. Spent Thanksgiving in Dominican Republic. Last time I was there was 2023, when we also went for Thanksgiving. So it was my mom, my dad, me, and my 2 brothers. A lot has changed since 2023. There's been a lot of development, especially around the airport. Last time, it was like a 40-minute drive from the airport to the resorts. But this time, there's much less traffic. There's now developed highways. It was a great experience. But right away, on cue, nothing ever really changes. When we're at the airport, there's all these Dominican guys walking around. They're all drivers, and each van goes to a different resort. So there's maybe 20 resorts. So there's different vans. And a family of Indians, they reek, gets in our van. And we just assume, okay, great. So look at that. Well, they'll be joining us at our resort, right? Of course. But they weren't really waiting in line, and they weren't actually following instructions. Like, we were already sitting in the van, and then out of nowhere, they just kind of piled in, and in a very aggressive and confusing way. So they didn't speak to the driver. They just got in the van. And then on the way there, my father's sitting in the front seat, because for the whole visit, my father doesn't act like a guest. When he's in the DR, he acts like he's not only at home, but like he's the emperor. Like he runs and funds the whole operation. The whole country's GDP is just him. So he sits in the front seat of the van and he's talking to the guy. And at some point, my dad turns around and says to me, "Nick, ask them ask them when their check-in time is, something like that, to like confirm that they're going like to our resort, like what their room number is or whatever. And I turn around and come to find out this Indian family, they're not even going to the same resort as us. But their inability to follow instructions, they just hopped in a random van. I know, but that checks out. As I've seen how they operate in India. That's what they do. Like, they just don't wait in line. They just hop on whatever train and they just hope that it goes to the right place. So now they've got zero awareness, like no survival skills, nothing. So now we've got to pull over on the side of the highway and we've got to wait for their van to like come pick them up. It's just so silly. And I wasn't actually annoyed. I was actually humored by the whole situation. And we're all looking around, you know, it's me and my family, my brothers, and we're all looking around. It's like, you know, nothing's like, we're used to this. That's how they are. You know, nothing changes. When we went to Niagara Falls with my family a few months ago as well, the whole place was full of Indians. We didn't see a single white person in the whole city. All the tourists were Indians, even on the Canadian side. But, you know, anyways, we had a very good stay. I was, you know, being around my family is always fascinating because my dad is like at that age where he doesn't care anymore and he's unacclimated to polite society. So a perfect example of that is at the airport, right? Let me start by saying that, you know, Secretary of Transportation, Sean Duffy, you know, Sean Duffy told us, he went on TV and he told the people of America that we should bring class back to our airports and that people should dress nice when they go to the airport. And you know what? That's the best thing Sean Duffy's done. Just verbalizing to the American people that they got to stop showing up to the airport in pajamas and sweatpants. But it became clear to me that no one listened. Because at this airport, everybody is, you know, they look disheveled. And, you know, every day we slip further and further from, you know, from polite society, you know, and closer to oblivion. But we're sitting on the plane and I fall asleep. It's like a 4.5 hour flight, I think, to the DR. I fall asleep. I'm very good at sleeping on planes. I've become very talented at that. And I wake up startled and I hear 3 gunshots. I'm like, holy shit. I'm on the plane. I wake up very concerned and startled. I turn around. My father's watching Netflix on full volume on his phone. Out loud. On the plane. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, he's not acclimated to polite society. And then he like doesn't even lower the volume. Like, he's sitting next to me. I'm like, Dad, you got to lower the volume. He's like, oh, yeah. Like, what are you doing? He just thinks that everybody wants to hear his random action movie. It was quite the way to wake up on a plane. And there's a lot of that happening on the trip, just a lack of awareness. And, he's getting a little bit older. So we tolerate that kind of behavior. And it's very funny. But in the moment, it could be a little embarrassing. Anyways, we had a great time on the island. My dad was watching. So we got 2 rooms. It was my dad and I in one room, and then in an adjoining room, it was my 2 brothers and my mom. So at night, my dad likes to fall asleep watching TV, and he's watching Nat Geo Wild, National Geographic. And he's watching a video of like a safari, like an African safari. And a lion out of nowhere jumps out of the bush and like kills like an African man, because like it just tears him up. And like it censors it and like it blurs it. And I was like, how is this even playing on TV? But I guess it's in another country, so they have like different rules. I have no idea. My dad's sitting there, he's like all giddy and excited. He was like, yeah, get him. I was like, what the fuck? Like, my dad's just insane, dude. And then my dad looks at me and he's like, one less refugee. I'm like, the dude's not even, like, he's in Africa. The guy's a native. So my dad just likes to see like the impoverished get mauled by lions. So that's what it's like being with my dad for like a solid 4 or 5 days, like constantly, just totally out of pocket, like nefarious shit is always going down. DR is still a third world country. Driving through the streets, you see like its poverty is rampant. We saw a pig. They took a pig and they put a pole through its ass and then through its mouth, and then they spin it. They like roast it over a fire, and it was pretty gnarly to see. It's hot as hell, everybody's sweating, whatever. But even with all of this, poverty on the streets, people just hanging out, loitering, everybody's happy. There's always music playing in the streets. That's what they got over there in the Caribbean. Everybody's dancing in the streets. You know, no one's working. There's no work to be done, but everybody's dancing in the streets. So that was cool to see. And we had a really good time there. I was shocked at the price of gasoline. Gasoline is $4.15 a gallon over there. And I did some research because it's all imported. They have no domestic production, and they have a small market. So gas is $4.15, which is, I thought, a lot. And they, at the resort, my father asked, and you know, my dad's Dominican, and he makes sure to tell all the workers, so they always treat him with care and respect, and we really get treated like kings. We really do, every time we go to the country. We get escorted right through the airport, right through security. It's great. And my dad learned from the employees at the resort that they earn $1.45 a day, $1.45 American USD a day, but a gallon of gas is $4.15. So it takes multiple days' wages to get 1 gallon of gas. So most people like carpool or just like bike. You know, cars are a luxury. But yeah, it was a great time. Really enjoyed being with the family, going back to my roots, you know, back to the DR. And it was cool. You know, went to the beach, whatever. It's too hot for me during the day, so I hibernate in the room every day from 11 to 3. I go back into the hotel room. I have my alone time, which is very important for me when I'm traveling. And, you know, the sun beats down on everybody outside, and I'm inside because I don't want to get a tan. You know, one of the worst things that can happen to a Dominican is they get called black and they get tan. Dominicans are very adamant that they're not black. They take extreme insult because Haitians are black. So Dominicans want to differentiate themselves. So just like Japan or Korea, you want to be light-skinned. Like Dominicans do their best. But, you know, let's be honest. You know, a lot of them are black. So you can only escape it for so long. Not that it's a bad thing, but they view it as a bad thing because Haitians, like they don't like Haitians. I say all this because I go back to the room during the day. I can't deal with the heat. And then at night, I really come alive. I go outside. I go in the pool for a few hours before it closes. Maybe hit the ocean. It was a great experience. A very good way to spend Thanksgiving. And it was nice. I mean, hanging out with my brothers. We swam with dolphins. That was cool. Enjoyed that. I'll tell you this. So we're swimming with dolphins, and the dolphin like kisses your cheek or whatever, and then you get to ride the dolphin. So when you ride the dolphin, it swims up behind you. These things are like ninjas. You know it's coming, but you have no idea when it's coming. And I'm watching. There's like 12 people in the group, and I went like 8th, so I'm near the end. And every single time I'm watching people in the water, everybody's always surprised when a dolphin appears. And me, as an outsider, I'm looking, and I clearly see the dolphin. And I'm saying to myself in my head, how are these people so confused? How do they never know when the dolphin's going to come? Don't they hear the dolphin swimming up on them? Like if I swim up on you in the water from behind, you would hear me come. I get in the water, producer. This thing absolutely sneaks up on me. Silent predator. Boom, just pops out of the water. You grab onto the fin, and it just pulls you forward. It's awesome. But my bathing suit was a little loose because I've lost some weight in the waist area. And my bathing suit fell down in the water. So I'm totally nude in the water. And the dolphin instructor, you know, he sees, and it's whatever. When my bathing suit gets pulled by the immense tide and power of this dolphin down my legs, I spread my legs, which was very smart because the bathing suit got tight and it caught on my ankles. So it wasn't like it was lost in the water. It was a salvageable situation. And this dolphin is moving so fast that when I move, instantly I like reach down, I pull up my pants, and I had a few observers tell me that, you know, nothing got exposed. But, you know, everybody saw. That's okay. Well, then we get back on this boat, we go back to the coast, and then, well, actually, this is now, so that's 2 international trips in a row where, you know, my privates are exposed in public. Maybe, I guess if you count the naked Japanese onsen as well, that's 3. So, I mean, I'm really putting up numbers here. Anyways, we boat back to shore, and the instructor comes over, and he gives me a look, and, like, he definitely saw, but that's okay. So anyway, the DR was an excellent experience with the family. It was very good. Yeah, I think that's, I don't want to, we've got so much to talk about today, So I think that's just a nice, gentle resting place for that segment. And, we've got a lot of advertisers. The podcast is becoming a lot more popular. And I'm now getting calls. They say, Nick, please, we would love to get a slot. Do your best, do your worst, whatever you can. We just want to get the word out. So we're going to cut to our first ad break here. Are you looking for medications that aren't FDA approved, but you are unwilling to break the law? Do you enjoy the Caribbean and watching Latinas stroll the beach? Come on down to the Dominican Republic and visit our little pharmacia, GBA Pharmacy. For a fourth of the price and with a much larger catalog, we can hook you up with a year's worth of any prescription. So get a tan, pop some pills, and get better, asshole. GBA, La Mejor Farmacia del Caribe. Back from the ad break. Thank you, GBA, for partnering with us. They serve the community well out there on the island. I want to talk about another little vacation I took out there to Washington, D.C. I've been told by a lot of my listeners that some of my stories are unrelatable. So, producer, I want to start by asking you a question just to maybe see if you can buy into this. Have you ever locked eyes with another man while you're taking a shit?
Oh, yeah.
Perfect. Then this story is for you. So, while I was in D.C., I ate at the Hamilton. It's a great restaurant, and at this point, it has become a tradition for my dear friend and I to go together every time I see him. This time, he brought his fiancée, and I also invited my friend with the intent of setting them up together. I'm just kidding. The four of us are eating. The drinks are flowing, excellent lemonade, everybody's laughing, and I'm eating a delicious pasta. So good. But I knew I was taking a chance because my body doesn't react well to that kind of food. So very quickly, my insides, they start acting up while I'm at the table. I'm on the verge of erupting. The verge. Like Mount Kilimanjaro or something. Like I'm gonna blow up. But I can't say anything because the fiancée is present. She's classy and I want to have respect for my friend. So I've got to hide my anguish. But eventually, I can't take it anymore. And I relent and I excuse myself to go to the bathroom. Now, in the bathroom, there's only one stall. Okay, there's one stall. And once you enter the bathroom and turn to the right, the stall is there. Okay? And then the urinals are tucked deeper into the bathroom. But when you enter the bathroom and turn to the right, the first thing you see is the stall. So I limp in, but I'm wearing jeans. And for this, visit to the toilet, I'm gonna need some flexibility, right? So I completely declothe inside the stall. It's gonna be a serious situation. So I usually bring my own toilet paper when I'm walking around anywhere. Usually when I'm walking, this is true. So usually when I'm walking around anywhere, I've got some toilet paper on me, like a nice hefty roll of 3-ply toilet paper. Toilet paper is such a useful resource. It's such a limited but valuable resource. It's more valuable than oil, I would say. You can use it to clean your hands. You can use it to blow your nose. You can use it to dab your nose if it's cold out. You can use it in the bathroom. It's good for a pinch. It's great. You can wrap things. Let's say you have something sensitive or delicate. You can wrap it for adding some padding. These are all things I've used toilet paper for in my life while walking the streets of whatever city I find myself in. But of course, tonight, because we were with the fiance, I didn't bring my toilet paper. So I completely declothed and I realized, oh no, I'm in trouble. I don't have my quilted northern. I don't have my 3-ply toilet paper. So now I'm angry and I'm bloated. I sit down on the toilet and immediately I let loose. Immediately. And my God, it felt great. It felt so good. But sadly, there was so much recoil that even with the music playing in the bathroom, everybody heard. Everybody heard. And one gentleman just so happened to walk into the bathroom at the exact moment of my explosion. And he turns and looks at the stall. And in this great country of ours, we have slits in between the stall doors. And the toilet is perfectly aligned such that through the crack in the door, I locked eyes with that guy. And he froze in fear. And I didn't. I kept going because I couldn't hold it back. So he looked at me for like half a second. It was to the point where we knew what was going on. We both knew. We locked eyes. And he just turned in horror and he left the bathroom. He just turned around and left. Like he was so, the secondhand embarrassment that he received was to the point where he just decided probably that he was going to go back to his table and probably wait 15 to 20 minutes, let me finish, and then he would probably enter. So now I don't know if I could ever go back to the Hamilton because it was rough in there. I mean, it was a serious cleanup job, and the toilet paper was only one ply. Even in a nice establishment like this, they gave me nothing to work with. So I've got to wrap my hand like I'm wounded, to take care of myself down there. It was brutal, but I really enjoy the food at the Hamilton, and I think I enjoy Alexander Hamilton and his place in our history. So I'm happy you could relate with me on that story, but it was brutal. It was pretty rough. Anyways, I don't even know how I got onto that train of thought. Oh, that's why. Because it was December. It's Christmas time. It's the season of giving, the season of joy. And that's why I thought about that, because I gave that guy like total nightmare. But I want to talk about when I was driving north to Jersey. So I'm driving, and this actually happened last year. But last year when I was driving north for the winter season, it was snowing. Okay, and I was driving through a place called Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania. You heard of this place?
No.
It's in like the upper middle part of PA. It's interstate, I think they call it Interstate 81. I think that sounds right. It runs through like the western part. No, not the western part, excuse me. It runs through like the eastern part of Pennsylvania. But as I'm driving through this terrible snowstorm, all the cars, I see multiple vehicles spinning out and in ditches. And my car is a small vehicle. So I realized if I pull over, I'm going to get buried, right? So I just have to push through, and I've got to soldier on. Well, there's an 18-wheeler carrying gasoline. So it's like a cylindrical 18-wheeler. You've seen these before. And it's merging left into I'm in the leftmost lane of like a 2-lane highway. And he's merging left, and I'm looking at the trajectory, and the back left of his trailer is going to make contact with the front right of my car. I see it happening in real time. And that's a bad situation. But I hit the brakes, and the brakes immediately, like the car starts shaking. My brakes have no traction. So I'm like, you know what? Let me just turn my car slightly to the left such that he won't clip my car. And it was right there. It was a close call. So I knew that if I just turned my wheel to the left just a little bit, I could turn it back and everything would be okay. And then I would just ease off the gas and I'd be really close, but it would work out. It was a dicey situation. I'm on the phone with my mom while this is all happening. So my left hand's on the wheel, my right hand's holding the phone. I'm a good driver. So I turn the wheel ever so slightly to the left, barely move it. And my car enters a full spin. It couldn't even believe it. The phone, my head bashes the window to my left. So I like hit or maybe that was later. I don't remember exactly what happened, but what I do know is my phone flew out of my hand and like hit the passenger window and then fell under the seat. My mom is panicking. She's screaming. She's on speaker. So as I'm fighting for my life over here, she's screaming, Nikki, she's freaking out. And I can't even yell and tell her to be quiet because I've got to handle this situation. So I enter a full spin, and you could barely see in front of you. But I in my mind, I'm like, I think I just did a 360 spin, so I think I'm totally fine. But then I see headlights coming through the snow coming at me. So I didn't do a 360, I did a 180. I'm now facing perfectly backward. But before that registered with me, I hit the gas. So now I'm driving backward, and I'm going to do a head-on collision with somebody that's coming right at me. So this all happened within 10, 15 seconds. I turn my car to the left again, and I shoot into the next lane, facing backward. I shoot into the next lane. And then I keep spinning the wheel, and like I do like multiple spins. My tires can't get any traction. Once again, my mom is screaming. And somehow, some way, my car then tail spins. So like I like reverse the wheel, like I move the wheel in a certain way. I forget exactly how this happened. But the front of my car stopped moving and it was now facing in the right direction. but the back of my car like fishtailed and then like came back, if that makes sense. And I think that's when I hit my head on the window, and I had like a bruise on my head. And I also like bruised my leg as well. So then I keep driving forward, and I say, and I yell like, Mom, it's okay. And I reach down, I get my phone. Crazy experience, right? Now, out there in Pennsylvania, they've got a lot of these Amish people. You heard about them?
No.
Amish are like a collective, they're like a minority. They're like an ethnic minority. I don't even know. They're like old-timey people. They don't use modern technology. They don't like electricity, all sorts of stuff like that. They have their own way of life. They're farmers. They're excellent people. I've had a few interactions with them, and I've heard great stories from one of my dear friends. I mention this because on the highway there's an overpass, okay? And the snow's coming down hard. And I see a carriage. I see a horse-drawn carriage above me on the overpass. This horse was black as night, dark black horse. And in that moment, as I drive under the underpass, I look up and I see the horse, and it stands on its two hind legs. And then I go under the underpass. And that was like the horse of death, you know? Like that was definitely the Lord like saving me, but telling me like how close I came. So I had an encounter with the horse of death, you know, the dark horse. So it was, you know, that was driving up in the winter is always treacherous. And this time when I left DC, once again, there's snow on the ground. And I decided, you know what, rather than taking highways and kind of having that pressure of other vehicles around me, so I'm kind of pressured to like constantly go like 60 miles, 7 miles an hour, I decided I would take back roads up from DC to Jersey. And it was actually an incredible experience. So beautiful. You see the snow on the leaves, like the snow on the trees before it falls, and the sand, or not the sand, I was getting ahead of myself. The snow getting kicked up in the wind, you know? And then I would let down the windows and like some snow gets in the car. Is beautiful. It's such a nice experience. You see the children in the distance sledding down these huge hills. I had Kanye West playing, Coldest Winter. I had that on repeat. Great song. It was a very, very nice drive. And then I get to Jersey. And, you know, obviously I spend my winter season up there with the family. It's great. I had a good time. A lot of things happened, and I had a lot of thoughts about the winter season in general. One thing I want to talk about is I don't think Christmas is for the middle class anymore. I think that for the middle class, Christmas used to be attainable. But now Christmas is something just for the upper class. The lights, the decorations, inviting the family over, the tree, hosting a party, you know, maybe you travel, gifts, Christmas dinner with the seafood and everything. If you wanna have a nice Christmas these days, you gotta drop like 4 or 5 G's. You know, and that didn't really become apparent to me, but I was, you know, doing the logistics of Christmas with my uncle. You know, I'm an integral part of that operation. You know, we go shopping and whatnot. We do the tree, the lights outside. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of work. It's always been a lot of work, a lot of time, like time that you got to sink into it and prepare for everybody. But the financial burden of hosting Christmas, truly unreal. I mean, you can't do it anymore. I mean, God, the Santa is like, it's become the whole holiday has just become unattainable for regular people, and that's a tragic thing about Christmas that I was thinking about. And another thing that really upset me this Christmas season is Charlie Brown Christmas. Charlie Brown Christmas is my favorite Christmas movie. It's not that long. It's like 20, 30 minutes long. It's very short. I love the music. I love the themes. You know, it's very biblical, which is rare to see in a Christmas movie. So I'm going on cable, and I'm trying to find Charlie Brown Christmas, and I can't find it. I do some Googling, and I find out that in 2020, Apple bought the exclusive rights to Charlie Brown Christmas. They took it off cable, and they put it on Apple TV. That's bullshit. Like, nothing is sacred anymore. And in capitalism, nothing is held sacred. So I had to settle for my second favorite Christmas movie, which is Home Alone. Die Hard is my third favorite. But anyways, Home Alone's my second favorite. And now that I'm an older man, I realized something about Home Alone, which is in Home Alone, the villain, we'll use the term villain, early in the movie is this old man who scares the kids, who scares Kevin. And there's an old man, he lives across the street, and when the movie starts, the first time we see him is he is shoveling snow, okay? And the sound of the shovel hitting the concrete scares the kids. And then he looks up into the window and he gives them a frightening look. And from that scene alone, that 15, 30-second clip, we as the audience are taught to fear this old man, who lives across the street. But in the end, as we know, he saves Kevin, right? He saves Kevin from the wet bandits. But it's actually unfortunate because this guy is actually doing God's work. The movie starts and he is salting the sidewalks. He's not even shoveling his own driveway. He's shoveling the sidewalk. And he's being a good Samaritan. And he's laying down salt that he has in a trash can. So he's framed as the villain. But he's the most noble guy in the neighborhood. He's out there in the cold shoveling snow, salting the sidewalks so everybody can still enjoy their Christmas in Chicago. And I really thought that was so strange. That never clued into me. And the true villains of that movie are Kevin's parents. He's the worst parents imaginable. Yes, they've got a lot of kids. They've got like 20 kids or something. That's another sign of the times. It's a multi-generational home. And it's never explicitly said, but they've clearly got like 8 kids or something. Something's going on in that house. I want to know what that guy does to make his money. But that can't happen anymore in this country. You can't, a working class family in Chicago, living out in like Naperville or something. You can't do that no more. I mean, really unfortunate, God. But they're terrible parents. The whole family treats him with disrespect. They leave the house. They forget about him. They throw him in the attic. For what? For standing up for himself against his asshole of a brother. I don't know. The movie really made me think about like sibling dynamics and how this old man was treated so poorly. But another movie I saw, another movie that came out, I think it came out on Christmas, was Marty Supreme. Now, Marty Supreme, excellent movie. Absolute great movie. It's like a perfect blend of 2 other movies I enjoy. Those being Uncut Gems and Whiplash. That's what I would say. Because Marty Supreme is about, Timothée Chalamet, right? And he's obsessed with his craft of table tennis. And the movie has the pacing and the anxiety of Uncut Gems, another great movie, directed by the same guy, actually. They're the same director. But it has that obsessive drive that Whiplash has. Whiplash, a movie about a guy who wants to be the best drummer in town. Marty in the movie is not a hero. He's a very... you could really argue that there's not a single character in the whole movie that is actually a good person. The movie is basically a constant battle between multiple people of bad morality, and we're just rooting for Marty because he is down on his luck. But just because he deserves to be. Like, he's not a good person. It's actually like justice personified. Like, we want bad things to happen to bad people. So I'm not saying that the movie was good because Marty is like a protagonist. He's very much like an antagonist. But I did see that, Marty and I have a lot of things in common. You may be thinking, it's because of our slender builds. We're 2 slender guys. We're, slender-framed gentlemen. You may think it's our obsession with our craft. Marty's obsessed with table tennis. I'm obsessed with, producing these broadcasts. I take these broadcasts very seriously. But above all, what makes Marty and I similar is our attraction for older women. My boy Marty is taking down scores in 1950s post-war America. He's got Gwyneth Paltrow for reasons I understand them, but it doesn't truly make sense. Sure, he feeds her ego and he makes her feel seen, but That whole situation with Gwyneth Paltrow, man, like their dynamic, such good acting, says a lot about like people and their motivations. Marty is just using her for her connections, but like she is using him for the attention he gives her. Um, so really, really fascinating, fascinating movie. And Marty does have an eye for older women. And the movie also shows like the lengths that people will go to get a trip to Japan. The whole movie is about Marty and he's trying to get to Japan, and that's also something I can relate to. And then at the end of it all, he finally finds himself in the promised land. But yeah, so Marty Supreme was a great movie. Really enjoyed seeing that. Saw Avatar. Avatar was good, but nothing really of a deeper sentimental value for me to say on that. It was a great Christmas season, and when I was reflecting on the year, I had a lot of thoughts on what America has become and what it used to be. And America is about the pursuit of happiness, but that is only for whites. Whites are supposed to pursue happiness, and the Constitution doesn't state this explicitly, but given the like social framework of the time, it's kind of implicit that like the pursuit of happiness in America, at America's core, was for white men who owned land. And that's why ever since I don't know how to say this. Ever since I was a boy, I always wanted to be white. It was my North Star. And producer, as ethnics, we don't really pursue happiness. We pursue whiteness. And by pursuing whiteness, we can get, tangentially, we can experience happiness in this great nation. Whiteness is a goal that I can never fully achieve, but I can get real close, right up to the line. So close that some unsuspecting whites will treat me as one of their own. But I must never forget my place. It is when ethnics have pursuits other than whiteness that society falls apart. Many of us desire identity, culture, fame, money, or worst of all, leadership in any form. These goals are narrow-sighted and corrupting. They overlook the all-encompassing virtues of whiteness. On the other hand, happiness is too complicated. So I let the white people handle that mystery, and I just try to emulate them. For example, my mother taught me that whiteness was buying food in Harris Teeter. So naturally, I made the store my home. I learned where everything was. I was even able to recognize the staff, the management. A few people knew me by name. I developed a relationship with the butcher, at my local Harris Teeter. But whiteness is ever changing. It's a moving goalpost. And this was proven true when I discovered Whole Foods. There are levels to this shit. I haven't earned the right to even shop in Whole Foods yet. But one day I will. I chase that goal. And I don't blame my mom for not teaching me right. As an Italian, she did the best she could. Because as Italians, we weren't white for long. We're not. We just pretend to be, right? In fact, my mom did so well in teaching me whiteness that when I was recently forced into a Food Lion, my nervous system was like sent into shock. The whole establishment, if we can even call it that, was sensory overload. The noise of the industrial floor cleaner that they've got this thing that they're buffing out the floors. They got this guy sitting like a lawnmower contraption, and he's buffing out the floors as people are shopping. The cries and the pleas of children, the physical imperfections of the staff. It's a challenging experience for the body to be in Walmart or Walmart or Food Lion. I mean, they're on equal footing. I was in this Food Lion. I'm checking out, and I witnessed a black lady in front of me. I witnessed her. I saw it with my own eyes. She transferred $3 to her checking account to pay for groceries. $3. She was fighting with the clerk behind the counter over a fictitious made-up discount on toilet paper. So she wants all this toilet paper and this food, and she's fighting for the discount, $3 discount. And they won't give it to her because the coupon doesn't even exist. She's like, it's like bullshit. She's pulling up like an Instagram ad. Like, look, like there's something, like that's not a coupon. So I see her transfer $3. And, this was the opposite of whiteness, and was engaging, my nervous system. And I call this blacktivities. That's what I call that. So she was engaging in blacktivities. She's stalling the whole line. She's negotiating. She's covered in fake accessories, fake jewelry, and that is what we need to strive against. That is what we as ethnics need to run away from. We have to chase the opposite of that. Whiteness doesn't mean stalling in the line or negotiating for a price. Whiteness entails moving at a brisk and respectable pace so as to not be a nuisance to anyone around you. It involves never negotiating. In fact, whiteness is being the highest bidder and paying more than a fair price. Just pay the highest price, you ask no questions. Whiteness is you get the bill at dinner and you don't even look at it. You just give your credit card. And then you look, the first time you look is when you're giving the tip and you're signing the form. That's what tipping is. Tipping was invented by white people. Black people don't even tip. So there's no way they would have invented that. Whiteness is never wearing fake Louis or Versace. Respectable whites wear at least 18 karat gold. They don't wear anything fake. Nothing below 18 karat. Certainly, how could they? So I thought a lot about that because I've been chasing whiteness my whole life. And I think I'm basically there. I know deep down I'll never be across that line. But at this point, when I travel or when I'm in new communities, I get treated as one of them. And that's how I know that I've definitely reached the middle class. Because now I get treated with the same level of respect that a white person would be treated with. So, yeah, those are my personal thoughts on the winter season. And we're going to cut here for an ad break. I hope you guys are having a good time so far. After decades of physical decline and waning nationalist pride, it is time to reignite the fighting spirit that lies within America's boys and girls. Join us for an unprecedented 4-day athletic event where the best and brightest will compete to bring glory and salvation to their state. One boy and one girl from each territory will have the opportunity to relieve their state from the burden of state-sanctioned tariffs and property taxes for a whole year, while receiving a free single-family home for themselves. 50 states, 100 tributes, 1 survivor, and infinite patriotism. Join us next summer for the Patriot Games, only on Fox. Back from the ad break, and next up we're going to do some domestic policy, domestic updates. This segment's going to be a little all over the place, but I wanted to, it's like a jamboree, like a grab bag of a bunch of little things that I saw in the news that I feel like I want to talk about. The first is there was a shooting. There was a shooting in Washington, D.C., where one National Guard woman, National Guards person, was killed, and another was put into critical condition. The killer was an immigrant from Afghanistan. Now, the media comes out, everybody gets upset. Trump makes, comments that are against, Muslims and whatnot. The typical parade that doesn't surprise anybody. But if you do some digging into this guy, here's some facts. These are facts about this killer, this Afghanistan guy, this immigrant from Afghanistan that killed the National Guards woman. This guy was recruited by the CIA as a child soldier at the age of 14. He fought for 11 years on behalf of the CIA in Afghanistan until he came to the United States at the age of 25. So we groomed him to kill innocent civilians, including doctors. And he did that. This is in his file, which is segments were leaked or released or whatnot. And this guy killed doctors, innocent doctors in Kandahar on the orders of the CIA. It's obviously tragic what happened, but it's also like it shows the blowback of the CIA and their reckless actions abroad. And as you guys already know, we've also been doing some pretty reckless, crazy things with the CIA down in Latin America that we're going to talk about later. So I want to talk about that segment. I mean, it's just the general underlying themes that are within all these episodes, which is the poor maintenance of the United States and its empire. And that is, there you go. That's another example. Also want to talk about FIFA. FIFA gave a fake peace prize to Donald Trump. They call it the FIFA Peace Prize. And they did this to feed Trump's ego and to curry favor with him so he does not disrupt the upcoming soccer games, because FIFA's coming to the United States. So stupid. Like, this guy is literally a child, and they're giving him fake awards, the FIFA Peace Award. And what's so pitiful is that it actually works. That's the crazy thing. These organizations know. They just know that all they have to do is stroke his ego, and then he'll roll over and give them whatever they want. There was a hearing on ICE. ICE is out of control. They're completely out of control. And there was a hearing on ICE, and the senator asks Kristi Noem, she's in charge of this whole thing. And Kristi Noem says, quote, "No veterans have been deported. No veterans have been deported by ICE." A representative then pulls out a live Zoom call, live, with a guy named Sa-Jun Park. He was a Panama War veteran from 1989. He fought in the Panama War. He got the Purple Heart. We gave him a Purple Heart, and ICE deported him back to Korea. He hasn't been to Korea since he was 7. He's a veteran with a Purple Heart, fought in the Panama War. We deported him. Kristi Noem is actually retarded. She's such a joke. She's actually retarded. Terrible. Next story. I know we're just shotgunning these, but I want to, there's really no way to connect them. In a new $1 billion deal, $1 billion, Disney has signed a licensing agreement with OpenAI that will allow OpenAI, which is, ChatGPT, to use Disney characters for the purposes of, quote, storytelling through generative AI. So what that translates to is we are witnessing the death of animation and human expression. Once again, in capitalism, nothing is sacred. The arts are not sacred. Human labor is not sacred. Nothing is sacred. So Disney, for $1 billion, just signed a licensing deal with OpenAI. I also want to talk about Trump's threats to the state of Indiana. Producer, have you heard about this?
No.
You're going to like this. This is good. This gives actually hope. In a show called No Good News, this is a little hopeful tidbit here. Trump comes out, and Trump is aware of the fact that he's getting slammed in the polls. And if the polls are accurate, the midterms should be a bloodbath for the Republicans. The Democrats should just blow out the Republicans in the midterms, which will then turn the last 2 years of Trump's presidency into a lame duck period, which should actually be a good thing here. Biden, as president, never did anything. But if Trump loses Congress, maybe then we can also make it where Trump does nothing as well. So Trump threatens the state of Indiana, saying that Indiana will get no federal funding unless they gerrymander the state to get more Republican seats. Wow, Nick, that's really fucked up. Well, maybe the state of Indiana is already gerrymandered in favor of the Democrats. You would be wrong. Currently, out of the 9 seats that Indiana has, 7 are already controlled by Republicans. It's a 7-2 split. So Trump threatened one of his most loyal states just to gain 2 House seats. He wanted to go from 7 out of 9 to 9 out of 9. Well, in an encouraging and unexpected turn of events, the state Senate of Indiana voted 31-19 against the new gerrymandered map. So the Republicans of Indiana, in an overwhelming vote, said, no, we're not going to do the gerrymandering, and they basically did a big FU to Trump. That was very encouraging to see. And slowly, and there's other little stories around the country of how even Republican states, they're little by little, they're no longer falling in line. And that's very encouraging to see, and it gives me hope for the United States. Another quick segment. Kash Patel, this guy's a fucking idiot, was caught using a private jet on federal funds to visit his girlfriend perform, and his girlfriend does like concerts. She's like a singer. He was using federal funds on a private jet to go watch his girlfriend, not even his wife, his girlfriend perform. He then did a interview, like a podcast, and in an attempt to defend himself, he says that he is not abusing his power. That's what he says. He is not abusing his power because he only goes to 15% of her shows. Incredible. Like, so what? We're supposed to say it's okay because you're only going to 15%, and that if you were going to 80%, then it would be a problem? What a goofball. I mean, what he should really be doing is trying to solve this Charlie Kirk assassination. Remember that kid that they took in for booking? We've heard nothing on that case. We've heard nothing from that. And why? It's because that kid's probably innocent. The entire story doesn't check out. But the government is too ashamed, and at this point, they're probably holding him without duress, and they're not giving him a trial. So, because that kid's innocent, and Kash Patel isn't going to do his job, and he's not going to figure out who actually did the assassination of Charlie Kirk. We'll probably never know who actually did the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Next story. This is a good one. This is baffling. Somalis in Minnesota have been caught committing major fraud. The fraud is extensive. And there are really two main categories that the fraud falls into. And it's all Somalis. Well, why is it all Somalis? Well, it's because just like every other ethnic minority that has yet to assimilate in the United States, ethnic minorities band together. That's what they've always done. That's what the Italians did. It's what the Germans did. It's what the Somalis do now. The Somalis were caught this is insane. I can't even believe this is true. Of the $18 billion of Medicaid claims that went through the state of Minnesota, $9 billion have been discovered to be fraudulent from Somalis. How can this even be possible? $9 billion! And that doesn't even cover the daycares. That's just the Medicare fraud. The Medicaid fraud. Unbelievable. Then people do more investigation. They get this nut job, this fucking retard named Nick Shirley. They send this kid out. He's a fucking idiot, this kid. They send him out to Minnesota, and he starts doing some independent journalism, investing daycares. Now, he goes to a daycare, and he goes to several daycares. And these daycares are they're fronts. They're fronts for criminal enterprise. What they do is they claim that the daycares are serving children of the state and that these children have learning disabilities. And then these daycares receive federal funding. They receive money from the government. So that's how the scam works. So this kid, Nick Shirley, shows up, and the hours of operation are all strange, and then people are like, oh, well, he showed up when the daycare was closed. Well, first off, that's only one of the daycares he went to, but that's the one that became the most famous. And the reason it became famous is because the sign on the daycare was spelt incorrectly. Whole thing's a front. And then the owner of the daycare, Somali, says, well, he didn't show up during our hours of operation. But according to the Minneapolis city ordinance, the hours of operation for a daycare are standardized. And this daycare was not open during those hours. What kind of daycare opens? I forget the exact time, but I think it opened at like 11 a.m. What kind of daycare opens at 11 a.m.? The parents have to drop the kids off before work. And the city ordinance is like something normal. It's like 7:30 to 6, something like that. And the hours of operation on this daycare were totally whack. But you see, even going down that rabbit hole, does service, that line of thinking is giving the fraudsters too much credit. It's a front operation. Then when they had to turn in their files, conveniently, like 2 days before, people broke in and stole the exact documents that they needed to prove. No, of course not. They destroyed their own documents because they didn't want to get caught. So, and I say that Nick Shirley is an idiot because he is. He did an interview with Channel 5 News, great channel on YouTube, and you can tell, and he's my age, he's our age, producer. The kids, I mean, he might have been like dropped on his head. That's why I want to be careful with what I say, because when you listen to him, like he might actually have like mental deficiencies. So I don't want to be too rude towards him. But he's definitely not this wizard, brilliant guy that the right is trying to make him out to be. However, even a retard is right twice a day, and he did uncover massive fraud by the Somalis being perpetrated in Minneapolis. The fraud is so bad and so extensive that people are now realizing Ilhan Omar is involved in the what should we call it? A conspiracy? What do we even call it at this point? She's involved. And Tim Walz, who was almost vice president, he was Kamala Harris's VP, he announced out of the blue during the heat of the scandal, he comes out and says he won't be seeking re-election and he won't be seeking office. Well, he knows, because if he ran for office, people would have kept digging and his involvement in the crimes would have come out. And he knows that Trump would not hold back. Trump would send his ass to jail, and he should go to jail. Dude's a crook. And him stepping down is proof enough of his criminal activity. If he was innocent, he wouldn't drop out. Huge, huge scandal. The DOJ, Trump obviously sicked his dogs in the DOJ on the case, and they're looking into it. And of course, Trump is doing it for political reasons. Of course he is, because it's a great way to make the Democrats and the immigrants look bad. So it's a two birds at one stone situation. But if we're going to call balls and strikes here, the Somalis have committed major fraud in Minnesota, and let's see if there's any accountability. Really fascinating story that I've been following. And it's, as we all know, and, as a conservative, well, this used to be true, but Trump has effectively brainwashed a large amount of conservatives in the United States, but conservatives used to believe in small government, as I believe in small government. And the reason conservatives believe in small government is because government is a corrupting force. And this story once again proves that, and that corrupting force is not limited to the Democrats. It is on both sides of the aisle. For our last piece of domestic news, we're now going to do a transfer, and I want to start by reading a direct quote. This is a very powerful quote, and I'm just going to read it as is. Here we go. Quote, "A clan of pedophiles wants to end democracy in Colombia. Harsh, yes, but that's the reality. And to keep the list from coming out, they send warships to kill fishermen from this city and threaten our neighbor, as if the people of Colombia would applaud the invasion of their neighbor. When would we ever be so treacherous and sold out to betray our own blood? A president of Colombia could not give aid to the Americans because he would be remembered as a traitor. I do not belong to those who wanted to kill Bolivar. The government of Venezuela has made many mistakes, but I will not lay a trap for the people to fall victim to invasion that is only for their oil. Driven by greed and violence to turn this beautiful corner of South America into another Syria, Iraq, or another Libya full of slaves. Epstein's list, his friends, those who do not want the list published in the United States, they want to use us here with violence. So the people of the United States do not think about their own government. They use us to avoid addressing their own problems." That is a direct quote from President Pedro of Colombia. This quote was said in a rally to thunderous applause by the people of Colombia, because Donald Trump was threatening Colombia with invasion when Colombia would not allow the United States to station troops in their country prior to the invasion of Venezuela. Now, I have a lot to say about the invasion of Venezuela, so that is going to be in the next episode, which will be released shortly after this one. We're recording a double header today for scheduling reasons. But instead, I want to use that quote to focus on the first sentence. A clan of pedophiles wants to end democracy in Colombia. We're now going to use this opportunity to talk about the ever-evolving Epstein list, the Epstein client list and his emails. The first thing I want to say is that these files have been released in waves, and that the government has fallen through and proven incompetent and committed crimes every step of the way. And when I say crimes, that is because they were directed by Congress to release these files and to only redact the names of victims. The government, number one, is still yet to release the files. In fact, after everything, what's today's date? February 7th. As of February 7th, the government has only released 20% of the Epstein files. So that is in direct breach of Congress. So that's number one already. But number two, they have redacted names within the files. Well, which names have they redacted? Have they redacted the names of victims? Sometimes. But other times they leave victims' names unredacted. But who have they actually redacted? The perpetrators. The government is redacting the names of the criminals. Well, wait a second, Nick. It's an ongoing investigation. Maybe they're redacting the names of the criminals because it's a developing case and they're going to bring charges. No. The director of the FBI and the deputy director, so that'd be Kash Patel, and the new deputy director, I forget his name because Bongino stepped down. He's an idiot. But the new deputy director, I forget his name. But both of them have come out and said the FBI is currently pursuing no charges against anyone named in the Epstein files. 0 charges for the most disgusting, blatant criminal behavior ranging from sex trafficking, pedophilia, literal espionage, financial engineering, insider trading, drug use, drug trafficking. Every crime you can think of is in these emails. And we, the people, can read them. And I've been reading them. You can find them. There's a website. It's called Jmail, like Gmail, but it's J. And it's Jeffrey Epstein's email. It's a website that people have created, and it's a searchable form like Gmail. It has the user interface looks just like Gmail. And you can search through Jmail as if you were Jeffrey Epstein, and you can like keyword search his emails. Every crime under the sun is in these emails. But somehow the government says they have no probable cause to even open investigations, which is insane. But for them to say such a thing, and for them to not be investigating, redacting the names of the perpetrators, of the criminals, is also illegal. So why are they doing it? They're doing it to protect their own. As George Carlin would say, it's a big club, and you're not in it. So, I mean, there are so many different angles to take this from. First, I just want to talk about Trump. Trump is all over these files. Now, in the first batch that got released, there's a photo of Trump purchasing a girl with a check. It's a massive check. It's like a check you'd win on a game show. And Jeffrey has a photo, and it's in these files, and it's Trump buying a girl, an underage girl, buying her. There is literally no other way to perceive this than for it to be sex trafficking. There is no other interpretation. There is an email where Jeffrey says that Trump has been alone at the house with a victim. He actually, it's Ghislaine in the email, but Ghislaine says Trump has, or maybe it was Jeffrey. There's so many where Trump is involved that I forget, but I think it was Jeffrey. Jeffrey says in an email to someone else, oh, it was an email to Ghislaine. I remember now. He says, Trump has been at the house alone with a victim for hours. So according to Jeffrey, in his own words, the girl is a victim, and that Trump has been alone with her for hours. We also learned from these emails that Trump first had sex with Melania on Epstein's plane, and that Melania was trafficked to the United States. But when she came here, she was a young adult. So it's still trafficking, but it's not pedophilia. I guess that's better, I guess. Like, I mean, at this point, you're like, it's like shades of gray. It's like shades of evil. And Trump's name was all over the files. So the government realized their mistake, because even when they're trying to help defend Trump, they're still incompetent. So they took a bunch of them down, but it was too late. People already downloaded them and uploaded them to Gmail, you know? So then they upload a new batch, and this most recent batch is the largest batch. Once again, just Trump is clearly visible in multiple photos. There's one report. There's a report in the files of a cab driver in Dallas who says that Trump. So, okay, I want to be very clear with this. In the past, in the early 2000s, the federal government was investigating Epstein. And they had 10 co-conspirators that they were all going to try at the same time. It's not a RICO case, but it's a similar concept that you basically charge Jeffrey and 10 other people all at the same time for working together to do a massive criminal enterprise. And one of the people they interviewed in this investigation was a cab driver, Trump's cab driver in Dallas. And he says that Trump was on the phone speaking to Jeffrey, and he could clearly hear Trump talk about abusing a young girl to Jeffrey on the phone. That'd be like if I was in the front seat driving and you're in the back seat and I just hear you on the phone. Now, all 10 co-conspirators have their names redacted, but for them to interview the cab driver, Trump's cab driver, that obviously means that Trump is one of the 10 co-conspirators back in the early 2000s. You're saying, well, wait a minute. Why didn't the FBI redact this interview with the cab driver? Well, it's just because they're incompetent. All the information that we've learned is despite the government's best efforts, because they simply didn't redact, and we know why. There was and this is actually a blessing. Jeffrey Epstein committed so many crimes over such a long period of time with so many people that the number of files that needed to be redacted is like over 100,000 emails and files. There was so many. And the government is so understaffed because of Trump laying everyone off in Doge and doing a hiring freeze in the FBI that they've used AI to redact the files. Well, what's the evidence for this? Well, when you read certain emails, the word don't, D-O-N-T, the word don't, will be redacted. And you can tell it's redacted because if you just use context clues and you read the sentence, clearly the word don't, D-O-N-T, is redacted. Why? The only thing that should be redacted is victim names. But even according to the government and the crimes they're committing, they're also redacting the names of criminals. They'll redact email addresses, like who the email was sent to or who it was sent from. And they'll redact nude images of underage girls. But why are they redacting the word don't? It's because it's Donald Trump's name, D-O-N-T. So all throughout the files in these emails, there's thousands of emails. The word don't is always redacted. Or in many cases, it's redacted. Why? Because it has high letter overlap with Donald Trump. So we know he's all over these files. I mean, we already knew it from the first batch, but in this new batch, Trump is taking a victory lap. Like, guys, look at all these new emails. I'm not in them. The country should just move on. Don't we have better things to talk about, like how great the economy is? No, Don, you're in the files. You're a sexual predator. You should go to jail for not for these crimes, but for the several other crimes you've committed. So Donald Trump is all over the Epstein files. Then the FBI releases another batch of 11,000 files, and they release batches 1 through 7. Okay, they release batches 1 through 7. Well, people then just changed the URL. They changed the number 7 to the number 8, and even though it wasn't listed on the website, it was shadow listed, which means it's on the internet, but it wasn't publicly available on the website. If you just change the URL to say batch 7 to batch 8, a massive hundreds of more documents load. So all you have to do is change the URL. And they did that for batches 8 through 15. And those batches 8 through 15 were not redacted because the government hadn't officially released those yet, but they're fucking idiots and they gave every batch the same URL. So it's batch 1, batch 2, batch 3, and people are like, you know what, let's just try something. Let me just see if batch 8 is available. And sure enough, it is. So batches 8 through 15, we have unredacted versions. And now the government is saying that they're going to prosecute the people who downloaded those. You're never going to find, like, see, that's the thing. Once again, let's be very clear, guys. They are ordered by Congress to release all the emails. So they can't go after the people. They have no case. So they were the batches 8 through 15 were searchable, but they were not listed. And they were basically unredacted. I think the naked images were, if I remember correctly, but like they were the names were not. The names were not. So from this batch, we learn. That is how we learned about the 10 co-conspirators from that batches 8 through 15. And also, since most of the names in batches 8 through 15 were not redacted, we learned that Les Wexner, the former owner of, he's dead now, but he was the owner of Victoria's Secret, was listed as one of the 10 co-conspirators. Well, why does that matter? Les Wexner is public knowledge that Les Wexner gave $250 million to Jeffrey Epstein for, quote, services. That's it. That's literally all the statement says. So clearly, this was how they were buying the girls and how they were funding the entire operation. It was a blackmail operation mixed with foreign intelligence, mixed with espionage. Like I said, guys, every crime you can imagine. And it's very clear in the emails that Epstein was truly like king of the world. And I'm very happy to see that Israel and their global hold on power is falling apart. But it's very clear that if Epstein was still in charge and still involved, if Epstein was still involved and he was still working for Mossad, all of Israel's negative repercussions, they wouldn't have happened. It's very clear from the emails that Epstein was hyper competent at his job as a spy, and that he had literally corrupted foreign and domestic leaders and business interests all over the world. So if he was still around and he was still a piece on the table, I'm sure that Israel's public image, for example, would have suffered no ramifications today. And let's think about that, because Israel had been killing Gazans and bombing Gaza for decades. But when they try it again, when Epstein is gone, all of a sudden they have a lot of issues. This is me saying Epstein was a terrible guy, but he was clearly great at his job. Clearly a one-of-a-kind spy. Clearly. In the new files, we learn that Steve Bannon, who served in Trump's first administration, we learn that Steve Bannon is, I'm not exaggerating, best friends with Jeffrey Epstein. In the new batch, there are videos, like interviews. So when Epstein got arrested, him and Steve Bannon were working together to rehabilitate his public image. Insane. So how'd they do it? There are text messages between Steve Bannon and Jeffrey Epstein, how they're going to film a interview. It'll be like a 60 minutes style interview. And the goal of the interview is to make Epstein look like a genius and like a philanthropist, like a Bill Gates type. This interview was never publicly released, but Bannon has said on his own show, Bannon has a show he records every day, and Bannon has said in the past that he was close with Epstein, and the reason he was close with him was because they were filming a documentary. Well, come to find out, it is true that they were filming a documentary, but Bannon never released it, and they were more than film buddies. They were best friends. So, in the interviews, Epstein is talking, and he claimed Epstein gives so much away. Epstein confirms that he was on the Trilateral Commission. You gotta just look up the clip. It's like 3 minutes long on YouTube. It's all over the internet now. Epstein explains that he was on the Illuminati, but they called it the Trilateral Commission. And he says, it's like, I'm basically paraphrasing, I'm basically quoting. He says, world leaders, their terms are 4 or 8 years long, but you need a stable force to hold the reins in between administrations, not only in the United States, but across Europe and Asia. We call it the Trilateral Commission, and I'm on it. He says it in the videos. and he explains that they control the world banks, the Rothschilds. These emails are insane. There's one email where Jeffrey says that he works for Mossad. There's another, so like that. I mean, but we already knew that. Well, he got brazen. You know, he just emails people, and he never. It's like Hillary with her private server. People get carried away, and they think they're untouchable. You know. He says that he works for Mossad. In other emails, he says that he represents the Rothschilds, which are obviously, you know, bankers, right? They control the world banks. He was representing everybody. There's another video where someone asks him, do you have any influence over the Syrian government? And Epstein says, yes, but not over email. We would have to meet in person. He knows everything, dude. He knew that he knew that the war in Ukraine would happen. Not the war that just happened, but the one in Crimea when Obama was president. There's literally emails, and he says in one of the emails, he's like, yeah, Russia's going to invade Ukraine in a few days. And he sent that email like 3 days before they invaded. This dude knew everything. Best spy on earth, probably. However, let me say it this way. They always say, would you rather be the worst of the best or the best of the worst? Epstein was the worst of the best. And I say that because the best of the best spies, we still don't know they exist. But Epstein was clearly in that echelon. Bill Gates, these emails are damning to Bill Gates. We learned that like he got an STD from having sex with children, and then he gave that STD to his wife, but he didn't want to tell his wife that she had an STD. So he gave her, like, he got pills from Epstein and like basically crushed the pills and put it in her food so she would unknowingly cure herself. There are so many, like, I could go on and on and on about all the insane shit in these emails, but it's very clear that Epstein and Israel has controlled the US government for decades. So much stuff on Bill Clinton. And like, that's the thing. Everybody involved in these emails is saying, everyone named in the emails is saying, I'm not involved. I knew he was a bad guy, but I never did anything bad myself. But the emails clearly say otherwise. You'll have someone email and you'll be like, I had a great time on the island. Elon Musk is the worst one. Like, Elon is like going to dinner. He's going to the island, but like he's going on X and be like, yeah, I never went to the island. But in the emails, he literally says his ex-wife, Elon's ex-wife, her name is Tallulah. That was his ex-wife's name. It's literally an email from Tallulah to Ghislaine. We had a great time seeing you last weekend on the island. We'd love to come back. We'll coordinate schedules. There's the emails are there. Like, anyone can read them, but publicly they're just denying. It's every rich and powerful person you could think of involved. Now, something I find fascinating is that in none of the emails yet, now look, more emails could come, and in every batch of emails, new people get named. So what I'm about to say might age poorly, but in none of the emails so far is George W. Bush, Dick Cheney, or anyone in their administration named even a single time, which makes me realize that Dick Cheney and George Bush, they bombed the Middle East just for the love of the game. It had nothing to do with Israel. They were just out for blood, you know? They just literally love of the game. That's why they got involved. But it's also becoming clear from these emails that Clinton, Obama, now Obama's never named per se, but multiple people in his administration are named. So I don't think Epstein, once again, this may age poorly, you know, it's an ongoing development. And we only have, but here's what I will say. If Obama was named, the government would definitely release those files because they want him to look bad. You know what I'm trying to say? But it's clear that people in his administration were controlled. Hillary Clinton being one of them, obviously. They had massive dirt on her and her husband. But the Bushes, they had nothing on them. They were just doing it for fun, man. You know, just bombing Iraq, invading Kuwait, all sorts of shit. Saddam, Afghanistan, all that was just for the love of the game. The emails really takes the mask off of power in the United States, and I feel like there's really just no debate at this point that like our nation is controlled by Israel. Like, I mean, at this point, it is undeniable. I mean, I feel like it's been that way for a long time, but if you even spend 30 minutes searching through these emails, it becomes like there's literally just no questioning it. You know that Jeffrey Epstein was a true Zionist and a true hatred of non-believers because constantly in his emails, with other Jewish people, it'll be him emailing another Jewish person. They say like, oh, I don't want to go to the dinner unless it's only Jews. Or like, I don't want to associate with goyim. Have you heard the term? Have you heard this term, producer?
No.
Goyim is a term used by Jewish people, and it just means people that are not Jewish. It's that simple. So a goy, G-O-Y, is the singular. That's a person that is a singular person that's not Jewish. Goyim is the plural. Anyone who's unironically using the term goyim or goy in conversations with their friends is like obviously a Zionist and clearly an agent of Israel. And that term is all over the emails. It's actually crazy. If you search up goy, how many emails pop up? It's unreal. It's so weird. I feel like us Catholics and us Christians, we should reclaim the word goy and goyim in the same way that like African Americans have reclaimed the N-word, like made it a sense of pride. We should reclaim the term goy. We really should. It's detestable that like all of our, and that's the thing, like anti-Semitic crimes and speech is on the rise in the United States, but like the Jews aren't doing themselves any favors, because at every turn we realize that no, in fact, they do have like allegiance to Israel and that they hate like Christians. Like at every turn, this is just proven to be more and more true. And like, I have nothing wrong with Jewish people. I don't like Zionists, and there's a distinction there. I have nothing wrong with Jewish people, but I once again reiterate, like, they're not doing themselves any favor amongst the public through all of these emails. Like, it's very clear that they do control the United States at this point. So I feel like that's a great way to dovetail this segment. There will be more. Of course, there will be more developments as more files get released. So we're going to cut to our last ad break, and then we're going to have a brief segment on the economy before we close up the episode. In today's media landscape, there is simply too much to keep track of. TV shows, movies, memes, and celebrity drama. Too much media to dull and distract the mind. That is where Goyslop comes in. Goyslop is a free mobile app that curates personalized media entertainment for its users. Using machine learning and other features such as friend lists, Goyslop will feed you exactly what you need. Pete Davidson's new girlfriend, Tom Brady's most recent thirst trap, Sabrina Carpenter's new sex pose. It's all waiting for you on Goyslop, your one-stop shop for current events and entertainment. Goyslop is founded by the accomplished team that served on the Trilateral Commission, created Bitcoin, and moderated the majority of Reddit and 4chan, so they are experienced in providing customers with potent social experiences. So be a good goy and join Goyslop today. Welcome back from the ad break. I've got to say, guys, I love this new app. So addictive. User interface is great. I love me some Goyslop. One more thing I just want to add really quickly that I forgot to mention in our previous segment is in the emails, it is confirmed that Jeffrey Epstein knew the founders of Bitcoin, and he calls it a scam in the emails. And if you guys look at the price chart today, that is why Bitcoin has cratered in price. And some reports are now saying it costs more in electricity to mine a Bitcoin than it's even worth. I don't know how that could be true because it's still worth like 70 grand, but I guess it takes a long time and lots of mathematical formula, computer bullshit, whatever, to mine a Bitcoin now. Either way, Bitcoin's cratering because like we now know that not only was Jeffrey Epstein heavily involved in its creation and funding the research, because that's what he did. He did a lot of funding of research and on behalf of Israel. But we know from the emails that like it's a scam and that like he knew the founders. So that's good because I've known it was a scam all along. Now, just because it's a scam and everyone now knows it's a scam doesn't mean Bitcoin will die. It could very easily skyrocket. I mean, at this point, it's just a gambling mechanism. That's all it is. So just because it's a scam doesn't mean that a month from now it's going to be worth less money. A month from now it could be worth more money. In fact, it may stick around for decades or forever. I don't even know anymore. I'm surprised it's survived this long. But anyways, and another thing I wanted to mention is in the emails we learned that Ghislaine and Jeffrey were some of the most powerful moderators on Reddit and 4chan. So they could like control, they could create different threads. They could control like which threads were sent to the top of the, of the website. Like, look, in these emails, they don't really go into lots of detail because, I mean, obviously, if I was to email a friend of mine, I wouldn't give a full expose of my criminal activities. But if you read through the lines, it's very clear that they had a lot of influence on the websites. Anyways, let's get into the economy. This will be a very quick segment. I want to start with a great quote that I came across. It goes like this. The end of democracy and the defeat of the American Revolution will occur when the government falls into the hands of lending institutions and moneyed corporations. Excellent quote from Thomas Jefferson that I really enjoy there. And Thomas had a good point because, I don't know, it feels like our government has fallen into the hands of moneyed corporations and lending institutions. But, that is kind of the story of this economic data. I mean, in November, the jobs report showed that only 64 new jobs were created, but October showed a loss of 105,000. And once again, this is after Trump has replaced the guy, so they're definitely fudging the numbers. Unemployment rests at 4.6%. Once again, that is a heavily underreported number, so it's higher than that. People come on TV and they get excited because in November, the inflation rate went down to 2.7%. First off, why are we excited about 2.7%? The whole point of the Fed and their, quote, goal is 2% inflation. But yeah, everyone gets excited at 2.7 because, yeah, it went down from 3.1, but like 2.7 is still terrible. But here's what no one talks about. The report was built on empty data. Due to the remnants of the government shutdown, multiple values within the CPI adjustment calculation were given inflation values of 0% because there was no time to collect data. This includes the most heavily weighted element of the CPI, which is the price of housing. So on this decreased inflation number of 2.7%, that assumed 0% inflation on housing because the government didn't collect data. Once again, it just shows like the whole thing's a racket. All these government values, whatever they are, you should pretty much just double them, and that's pretty much the actual value. This is a direct quote from Donald Trump that was really disheartening. Quote, "If we build more housing, the price of homes will go down, and homeowners will lose their wealth. We cannot have this happen." Thanks, Trump. Really appreciate that. So that's just an admission from Trump where he is serving his own generation, the boomers, and despite all of his public claims that he's trying to make housing more affordable, that is clearly not the case. Because how can you make something more affordable if, quote, the price is like if he says the price of homes will go down and homeowners will lose their wealth, and that cannot happen. So he's just talking out of both sides of his mouth, but to say that kind of statement implies that that's how he actually feels. And his policies have proven this. I mean, Trump's policies have not lowered housing prices. So that's obviously where it's at. This stat really scared me. 10% of Americans aged between 20 and 24 are excluded from all four of the following categories. 10%. They don't have kids. Okay, that's actually kind of a good thing. It's kind of young to have kids. Now it gets bad. Get ready. They're not in school. They're not working. And they're not seeking work. So 10% of young adults aged 20 to 24 are not in school, not working, and not seeking work. What is going on to the youth of this great nation? What is happening? So the Federal Reserve projects that unemployment will hit 4.4%. Inflation will average 2.4% over the next year, but GDP growth will only be 2.3%. So by the Federal Reserve's own projections, they're anticipating a negative real GDP growth of 0.1%, which means no economic growth. Another thing that came out, which I found fascinating, is according to Meta's own internal documents from 2024, Meta, they own Facebook and Instagram. According to Meta, 10% of all of Meta's revenue comes from, quote, advertising scams and banned goods. What? Like, why? Why? That is so unethical. According to their own internal documents, 10% of their revenue comes from advertising scams and banned goods, which is $16 billion, which is also crazy because that means they earn $160 billion of revenue in 2024. Wow. Well, I don't know if I verbally predicted it on this podcast, but I know that I certainly did amongst my friends, whether that be on air or off air. But I was talking about how the Federal Reserve was going to have to resume printing money and how they would have to end quantitative tightening. I'm pretty sure on the last episode I said that very soon I expected them to begin the printing of money again through QE. Thank you, producer, for confirming. Well, here's the news. As of December 12th, the Federal Reserve is printing $40 billion a month. They're using that printed money to buy T-bills with maturities under 1 year. Now that's fascinating because in the past, QE has always been done on long-term bonds, on long-term debt, maturities of 7 years and above, which I've talked about in previous episodes. But the bond market is falling apart to such a degree that they're now using $40 billion a month to buy T-bills with durations of under 1 year. This is unprecedented behavior. The Federal Reserve has never used money printing to buy short-term debt. We are entering a serious debt spiral. It's very, very bad. And this is going to be so bad that I don't even know what's going to happen. Remember, that's $40 billion a month with no end in sight. No end date was given. Now, Powell isn't calling it QE because technically they're buying long-term bonds and not short-term bonds. So, like, I guess, but I mean, they're printing money to buy bonds. So I just think that it is QE, and he's calling it, quote, buying treasuries. He's just calling it that they're doing a purchasing program of treasuries. But like, it's QE. They're expanding the balance sheet. They're printing money and expanding the balance sheet. Anyways, something I want to talk about is, historically, QE has purchased long-term bonds to suppress long-term interest rates. And long-term interest rates affect car loans and home loans, so mortgages. But now they're suppressing short-term rates. And there's a reason why. The government is selfish. The government no longer has an interest in lowering long-term rates for housing or car loans. They now have a selfish interest of lowering short-term rates to protect the national debt and to defend bankruptcy and to prevent default. A very large percentage of the national debt is now 1 year T-bills. So those are the rates they have to lower because those are the rates that impact the national debt. The national debt is no longer governed by long-term rates. It's now mainly controlled by short-term rates. So we're now in a situation where it used to be when the government printed money that mortgage rates would come down. So yeah, it was terrible for the country, but at least regular citizens would benefit. That is no longer the case. We have now entered the phase of money printing where it no longer even benefits the citizens in any way, in any feasible way. At least in the past, it benefited asset owners. Now it benefits no one. So this is very, very depressing. And I wanted to do a quick economic segment today because I want to respect the viewership time of our audience, and I know that I'll be releasing a second episode a few weeks after the release of this one. So the last thing I want to talk about is the Japanese bond market. Now, the Japanese bond market is something I don't think I've ever talked about on this episode, but it is very important to the liquidity markets within the United States and the prevalence of the US dollar. The reason for that is because there's something called the carry trade, C-A-R-R-Y, the carry trade. The way the carry trade works is people borrow money in Japan. So when they borrow that money, they're borrowing Japanese yen. And then they use that Japanese yen that they borrowed in Japan to buy international assets. They'll buy American assets, they'll buy European assets, whatever. And because interest rates in Japan were so low, when you borrow money in Japan, they charge you a low interest rate. They might charge you, let's just guess, 0.5% on money that you borrow in Japan. But then you'll turn around and you'll literally just invest that money in the United States and you'll get a guaranteed 4%, for example. And that's called arbitrage. And the term specifically for Japan, we call it the carry trade. Well, the carry trade is unwinding. The Japanese 10-year bond just hit a massive high of 2.2%. That doesn't sound high, and it's not. American rates are higher. But at 2.2%, the carry trade is no longer profitable for international investors. So we are seeing a massive unwinding as people flee the dollar because they have to reconvert their dollars back into yen to pay off their debts in Japanese yen. In addition to that, interest rates in Japan are rising because the government, the conservative government that just won in Japan, and just like any government, there are pros and cons. A pro to the Japanese government is they're cracking down on the massive immigration that was approved by the previous administration. So maybe there is hope for Japan and the preservation of their culture. They still have the population issue and their birth rate issue. But the conservative government is populist, just like Trump, and they just passed a massive government spending bill. But you see, usually when a nation passes a spending bill that they can't afford, the economy collapses and interest rates rise. And that's exactly what happened in Japan. That doesn't happen in the United States because we have reserve currency status, which, although withering, is still prevalent. It's just withering in its influence, but we still have reserve currency status. So the Japanese economy is suffering higher interest rates because people, lenders, international lenders, and domestic lenders, know that the government cannot pay for this package. Well, the Japanese government is now considering the sale of American bonds and using the money they gain from selling these bonds to pay off the deficit, the spending gap between the revenue that the government takes in and the cost of their spending plan. If the Japanese government starts selling US bonds, it could literally trigger a collapse of the bond market. Now, that is yet to be seen, but we do have rising interest rates in the United States just on fears that this could happen. And let me be very clear. If the Japanese bond market collapses, there is no way that the United States escapes from that unscathed. There will definitely be fallout. But the worst thing that Japan could do would be to liquidate their US bonds. That would trigger a massive domino effect and probably induce a recession overnight in the United States. And obviously that would be a major issue. I mean, but even besides inducing an overnight recession with Japan, we actually have even more issues here at home. Earlier I was talking job numbers and one slipped by me. In December, we only posted 50,000 new jobs. It's a very low jobs number. So we have now been under estimates for several months in a row. In addition to that, Trump came out and announced that he wants to lower short-term interest rates to 1% or less. I mean, guys, if short-term rates are 1% or less, inflation is just going to go through the roof. It's already very high. I don't know. I'm very concerned about it. And so December was 50,000 new jobs. So at least that's positive. January, the month that just ended, we posted 108,000 layoffs in January, which means that the new jobs of November, which was 56, because November got revised down to 56,000 new jobs. So all the new jobs in November and December put together were basically wiped out. No, they weren't. Not basically. They were actually more than wiped out by layoffs in January. This is not the sign of a healthy economy. In fact, January saw the most layoffs in the month of January since January of 2009. 108,000 layoffs in 1 month. So the economy is teetering at the very best. And let me just quickly touch on one last thing. Trump is, suing and going after Jerome Powell, the chairman of the Federal Reserve. So Trump is bringing the Fed to court over, quote, misuse of funds to renovate its office. But that's not true. What's actually going on here is Trump is bringing the Federal Reserve and Powell to court because Powell didn't play ball. Trump wants Powell to lower interest rates. Powell is refusing. Let's be clear. He lowered them a few times, I mean, interest rates are now 3.25% on short-term rates. So they were 5.5 or something, like 2.5 years ago. So Powell has lowered rates, but Trump wants them at 1%. And Powell realizes that by doing such a thing, inflation would be worse than it already is. So to coerce Powell, Trump is now bringing him to court. And in a never-seen move, this is unprecedented, Powell released a statement, like a video, like a video response saying that the Trump administration is trying to coerce him into lowering interest rates, and that the suit being brought against him is purely political. Then you have foreign banks, the European Central Bank, multiple banks, foreign banks, come out and they endorse Powell. Wow. Unprecedented. Absolutely unprecedented. For the Fed to first make a statement against the president, and then for foreign governments to come out and openly side with the Fed. Trump is on a collision course, and his authoritarianism has never been checked, and he has never suffered consequences, despite the fact that he continuously breaks the law. And because of that, he continues to be more brazen. So let's see how things shake out in the coming months. But I'm going to, we're going to end this episode here, and the next episode is going to be more about travels. I hope that you guys enjoyed this content, and have a nice day.